Welcome to Jewish Boy Calls His Mother. I'm your host, Sadia, and this is my mother, Ema. Hey, Ema.
Hi, I'm still working with the camera to try to eliminate my double chin. This way?
You're fine.
That way?
Keep your shoulders back and like your chin up, and like that's supposed to help somehow. um, this week's topic is the question: what did you think we as your children would grow up as?
Um, that great American Al Capone, yes. Actually, remember Etty,
Yeah.
Nova's sister, had an assignment in school one day, and school, and I think it was when she was in high school, that she had to write about um I don't know how they worded a great American or an American um who had a very strong influence on American history, and she wrote about Al Capone.
Well, I mean, he did help with putting expiration dates on milk cartons.
Are you joking around?
No, being serious.
What?
What happened was
Really?
that I think it was his it was his daughter or his family member that was sick, and they realized that they were getting sick from the milk. So he forced the Chicago government to create expiration dates for milk, and it kind of took off.
Wow.
Yeah.
I didn't know that. See, even evil people have that one or two things that they benefits that
There's always a silver lining. There's always something to benefit this world. It just so happens that some people commit genocide. Um, so
but this,
back
I think it was Adolf Hitler that created the Volkswagen and the Autobahn.
Yeah, and Hugo Boss designed their outfits. It's a whole long list. We can go on and on and on about the efficiency of Germans. Um, so back to saying, like, what did you think we were going to grow up to be?
um, I thought, well, I thought you were going to do something in the artistic field because when you were in fifth grade, you used to do these like little comic things, little comic strips,
Yeah,
and you sent them around the class. And one of your teachers told me that usually when a kid doodles in class, he makes them throw it out. He says, in your case, when you would doodle in class, when class was over, he would ask you to please sign your name and date to it, and he would take it and keep it in his drawer because he said he knows one day all those little comic things you were drawing are going to be worth something. Because he also felt that a lot of your teachers felt you had a lot of artistic talent. And I remember I signed you up. There was this man that was giving classes from his house in cartooning
yes.
and drawing, and I sent you there for lessons.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I went there. I mean, I didn't necessarily learn anything from him because I was obsessed with art cartooning. So I read all these how to cartoon
Hmm.
books. So anything he would be talking about, it kind of wound up being like, oh, I know that. Oh, I know that. Oh, I know that.
You mean
And
I wasted my money?
you probably did.
Yeah.
But I was also saying, like, I know Mushki's very artistic, and she even got the lead in a play. You were telling me about that.
Yeah, but I didn't realize how artistic Mushki was until remember she posted on the family WhatsApp these beautiful drawings she did of her dog.
Well, she
I
has
was
her
like
own
shocked.
Instagram.
It was beautiful.
She has her own Instagram of all the artwork that she does.
Hmm.
I don't want to shout it out now, but like, maybe I'll post it later. But like, she has like all this art. I like her work. It's there's a very rugged way of expression that I really can enjoy. I mean, I remember as a kid, we would draw ghosts. So I would draw the cartoonish ghost, that looks like somebody in a sheet, and she would just like freakishly make a like perfect rectangle of just diagonal lines. And she's like, yeah, that's the ghost. That's what it
Wow.
looks like. And I'm like, okay, all righty. All righty. Okay then.
Maybe it was.
Well, I don't I think I've asked her about this a couple times. She's like, I don't know, it's just something she made as a kid. But
But
yeah,
what happened was I was surprised when she became an American Sign Interpreter because that's something unusual.
yeah.
Usually most kids, what do you want to be? Doctor, nurse, lawyer, teacher, but plumber, whatever, what's space, construction
Face
worker,
fuss.
or so, and a truck driver. But it when she was in ninth grade, she came back very, very excited that she had to lead in the ninth grade play. And I know she had a problem with recall. So I said to her, "Are you sure you can memorize all those lines?" She says, I don't have any lines. I only have one word." I go, "You're the lead and you only have one word?" She says, "Yes." And I thought, and I go, "You're Helen Keller in The Miracle Worker." And she did a really good job. She did a terrific job in the play. And then later on, when she was either in 11th or 12th grade, as an elective, they offered a class in American Sign. And her teacher um, saw me, like, in the community, like shopping 7 Mile Market, whatever. And her teacher said to me, "Your daughter, Mushka, really has an amazing talent in American Sign."
Wow. Um, Another one you were talking about with like Yosef being critical of his rabbi. That was a funny story
Oh,
you were
yeah.
saying.
Um, Yosef surprised all of us. We thought he would be a doctor, and I'll tell you why. First of all, he was Kananahar, he was very precocious little boy. At the age of 3, he was using some very advanced vocabulary, which even amazed Rabbi Kahana
Yeah.
at school when he came in. When he was going to admit him to TA, he tested him on Aleph Beis, and Yosef recognized most of the letters except when he looked at the Ches and he looked at the Hey. He said, "I know these two letters are similar." And Rebbe Kahana whispered to Mrs. Was it Gerstein?
Gerstmann, I think her name
Gerstmann.
was. Yeah.
Rabbi Kahana whispered to her, "Did you hear that?" He used the word similar, which is
Mm.
very unusual for a little 3-year-old kid. So anyway, when he was 8 years old, this rather, let's
Obese
say,
and
obese rabbi, one of the teachers, he was walking down the hall and he was eating a candy bar. And Yosef runs up to him and says, "What are you doing to yourself? Look how fat you are, and you're eating a candy bar." And then he noticed the same rabbi had cigarettes in his pocket. He goes, "And you smoke? What are you trying to do? Put yourself in an early grave?" And the rabbi gently took him by the arm, took him to Rabbi Kahana's office, told Rabbi Kahana what happened. So Rabbi Kahana called me and told me about the incident and said, "I gave Yosef a lecture about speaking respectfully to a Rebbe, but in all honesty, I couldn't punish him. He was so right."
that was awesome.
So I mentioned the incident to your aunt, Anne, and that's when she said, "Well, he should be a doctor."
um, so I want to talk about this too. I remember growing up, and we really had to be creative when it came to making a meal. And I remember, like, I loved making grits. I loved when you made, the warm milk with the, cinnamon and sugar and vanilla.
Mhm.
But for you, what would be like a delicious poor man's meal?
Well, you were talking just to diverse a little bit.
Yeah.
When you're talking about being creative, I think, quite honestly, I think all mothers, unless you're rich enough to hire a cook to work in your kitchen, or you're Kananahar, very, very wealthy, I think most mothers at one time or another do struggle with trying to stretch the family budget and to make meals that everybody likes, because it can't be steak every night. So there was one time, I just made, I would take eggs, hard boiled eggs, and I would, just shell them, cut them in half, and sprinkle seasonal on them. And you kids kind of like that, that with a salad and bread and maybe a vegetable soup or something. So Yosef noticed I had already boiled the eggs up, and I was about to, shell them and cut them. And he says in half, and he says, "Ema, can I make the eggs for you?" I said, "Sure." So I went off and I was doing something else, and I turned around and I couldn't believe it. In like just a few minutes, he had this whole platter full of beautifully cut eggs, like you're cut in the middle. And you came into the kitchen, you go, "Oh, yummy eggs." You picked up one of them, you bit into, and you went, and you spat it right out. I go, "What's the matter?" This was so boy. Yosef, being a boy, didn't realize that you have to take the shell off first. He just took the eggs with the shell and just cut them right down the middle. And I had to crack up laughing because it's so boy.
Yeah.
Because even a little girl, a girl would instinctively know to take off the shell first before you cut the egg in half.
I love it. But yeah, so back on track then. What meal would you say?
But I think a poor man's trying to think. Usually something in the area, usually something in the area of a vegetable soup, of a creative vegetable soup. You might have like onions, carrots, celery, cabbage, garlic, and just throw it into like a pot of water and use the those the Parva chicken soup flavorings that they have, the powder, the Parva chicken soup flavorings, maybe some chili powder, maybe some cumin, and then you might want to add maybe some like noodles to it or rice, something like that would be good. And a soup, like a vegetable soup like that, and latkes. Like I would make potato latkes, but I would add tuna fish to it, so it was more protein. So it was like tuna potato latkes.
Oh yeah, I remember you made some tuna potato latkes.
Yeah,
those were actually not that bad. I don't know why I thought they were salmon in my head, but
sometimes salmon latkes, and then sometimes potato tuna.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, that would be a decent creative on like poor man's dinner, you might say.
So we talked about this also. So like I'm not bum rushing you with all this information, but what was your biggest failure?
I'm just kidding.
I said failure, not disappointment.
Touche. You opened up yourself for that.
I know. I set myself up for that one.
Checkmate.
But yeah.
So biggest failure. Yeah. That's a good question. Biggest failure. I would have to say my first couple years of teaching.
Yeah.
I made a lot of mistakes. I made some horrible mistakes that I look back now that I would have handled a lot differently. I mean, I've met women. I shouldn't be sexist about this. I should say men too.
Have you met any men teachers?
Well, there's Rebbe's. Yeah.
Oh, you're right. Duh. Like I totally.
Yeah. But I have never. When I was in college, there was a guy. I'll never forget this boy's name. This young man's name. His name was Bud Stupi. That was his name, Bud Stupi. Cute. Big, tall, blonde guy. Obviously, German background. He was getting his degree in preschool education.
Interesting.
He loved children.
I wonder what he's up to now.
I don't know, but he loved and I remember one time seeing him with a kindergarten class reading them a book. And as a matter of fact, when I was at Towson, we had an experimental preschool in Towson called it wasn't just a preschool. I think it extended to elementary school too. It was a preschool elementary school called Lyda Leach Hall. And it was, like I said, it was like a kind of an experimental type school. And they had there was a preschool teacher there who ran a terrific program. And it was a man who ran this terrific preschool program, handled the kids so well. And he dressed in army fatigues. I have a feeling he might have been a Vietnam vet. I don't know. But he actually dressed in army fatigues to run the class. And I remember he was giving the kids, he made pudding for the kids or something really nice. Like I think it was pudding or something, or ice cream or something. And he was dishing it out to the kids. And there was this one little girl who she was having she was on the floor. She was having a temper tantrum. She was yelling, she was screaming. And he kind of like just ignored her and just patiently was dishing out the ice cream or the pudding. I forgot what it was to the rest of the class. And then he said to her, I guess, I forgot what her name was, but we'll call her Alice. He said, Alice, you're invited to join us and have some ice cream as soon as you get off the floor.
Oh, that's cute.
Very, very nicely, very sweetly, and very patiently.
So back to your failures. we were talking about like maybe the philosophical ideology of how to
Yes,
handle kids.
I think the problem with our teacher education at the time, and I hope and pray that it's changed. If it hasn't, I feel horrible about it because there was very, very little time that was spent on actual skills, teaching actual skills, and giving us teachers the actual teaching skills that we needed to run a classroom. All that was done, our heads were filled with all this leftist ideology, and we are killing our children and they need free expression. And then you get into the classroom and find that you don't know how to handle the class, and all that philosophical garbage you were getting means nothing
Mm.
and does not and has no place in the classroom. We really needed to be taught actual classroom management skills, and we weren't.
So what instances can you remember or recall?
Oh,
Uh,
plenty of them.
so give me one. Give me one.
Too many. Too many. Um, eh, I was much too negative with the. I was afraid. I was so afraid of losing control of the class that I went over instead of concentrating on what the kids needed and engaging them. I was just interested in maintaining classroom control, teaching my lessons, and let's get out of here, type thing.
Oh,
And that was no good. I my first class that I taught. I mean, I really I was too negative. I really lost them, and I was trying to do this like free, this free like education type thing where the kids just kind of like pick and choose whatever lesson they want and just go off on their own. And it did not. I did not work. The kids didn't. The kids were just, like I said, the kids were not under good control, and they weren't really learning. I mean, I did some things though that were successful that looking back that I think the kids got a lot out of, like for math. What I told them to do was for a math lesson, I had them bring each $2 each to the class. It was a math lesson in dollars and cents. And right around the corner from the school was a vegetable store, like a grocery vegetable store, mostly fruits and vegetables, produce store, little mom and pop produce store. This was in Brooklyn, off of Kings Highway. So for math, we went to the store, and I told them, with your $2, you have to buy some fruits or vegetables and get change and bring the receipt with you. And then write down, show on the board, your $2, how much you spend, how much change you got, and read off for the class what you bought and how much each item cost. And that's what they did. And I think back to that lesson. That was a really good constructive lesson.
yeah.
That was I think that was creative and very constructive. But just my whole there was this one girl later on when I was teaching now a few years later. I taught seventh grade English, and there was a girl this girl came from a horrible, horrible home, horrible dysfunctional home, and really needed a lot of attention, a lot of help. And instead, I just treated her like she was a pain, which in many respects she was a pain. But there was a better way I could have treated. Like, okay, what happened was she stole something,
Hmm.
and I knew it was her. And I said to one of the girls, this was like they were having some sort of fair in the school, so the kids were like all over the building. They were having like some sort of carnival or fair, and one of the kids had bought a doll at one of the carnivals, and she put it down for a minute, and then she came back to me. She said that she put down her doll for a minute, and she said she came back, and then she turned around and it was gone. And she told me that there were two other girls in the room with her, and one of the girls that she named was this girl. So I
Hmm.
knew right away this girl stole it. So I told the kids, get this girl for me. And she came over to me, and there was another teacher that was there with me. And we walked over to this girl, and she had her jacket like all buttoned up, like all zippered up. And we said, okay, give us the doll. She goes, what are you talking about? And the other teacher says to her, unzip your jacket. So she looked down, she unzipped the jacket. Yeah, she had the doll. And all the kids were standing around, they saw this. What I should have done, not to embarrass her, I really should have done, was I should have told this girl, okay, I'll look into it, I'll see what's going on. And I should have looked for this girl myself, taken this girl quietly to say another place away from everybody, and said to her, okay, I know you took the doll, but look, I'm going to do you a favor. We're going to pretend that you found the doll, and you're going to give it back to the girl and say, oh, I found it, and it was in the hallway, and I knew it was yours, so I'm bringing it back to you, and we'll just keep this as a secret between you and me, and I'm not going to embarrass you. That's what I should have done. I also should have done something to give this girl a little more attention. Like during math, she was I taught this math lesson, and she raised her hand and she said, I don't get it. And I said, she goes, I said, what's the problem? She goes, she said something about, well, I'm not getting it because of a stupid teacher that doesn't know how to teach it. And so I said, well, maybe you're right. Let's take a vote. And I said to the class, how many people feel that I've not taught this thing properly and want me to reteach it? Nobody raised their hand. So I said, they're sorry, the class seems to disagree with you. What I should have done, I should have said, look, meet with me during the break or during recess, and I'll work with you. I'll work with you individually so that I can help you with this. In other words, I should have taken her more of like been more helpful to her.
Now that you mentioned that story, it kind of reminds me just dealing with this one situation where it's something similar, not necessarily like the person definitely is troubled, and I'm just like, I'm not handling it the way I think I should. I'm just reacting, and I need to kind of take a break and take a step back and evaluate what's the best way to handle this, because this person's very disturbed and something's definitely off. And it's like, I want to do the right thing and do the dam lechafzachos, give the benefit of the doubt kind of situation where like, I'm going to tell them what to do, or I'm just trying to ignore them, or trying to find out another way to handle this than just getting angry with them or getting mean with them or getting like just getting frustrated with them. And I think that's something where like, as you get older, you just develop more patience and you realize it's not that important. Like I remember speaking to Tati, and when we were younger, there would be situations where like somebody in the family would be with someone and then they get divorced or they get broken up. And then like Tati would go on this kind of rampage thing where like we just take like cut the pictures in half and cut the person's out of it and things like that. And when I went through my thing in my divorce, and I asked Tati like, hey, should I be doing this? And like he looked at me, it's like, you know what, you have good pictures, just be happy you have good pictures, don't ruin them, and like that's something, I guess, when it comes to time. And I think it's so
Although
funny.
I must admit, I did take the pictures of you and your ex, and I deleted them from my phone.
Oh, yeah. But this is kind of leading into the next thing I wanted to talk about with you. Because we're talking about trying to deal with reality and make the right decisions, does religiosity take away from reality?
Actually, it gets you more in touch with reality. Really.
Care to explain?
I think that's the purpose of the mitzvahs too, to get to actually to how can I say it? It's like, I'll give you an example. I was at a class where this rabbi was talking about adopting children, and he was saying adopting children is a wonderful thing to do. He says to give a child a chance at a good life who otherwise wouldn't have had such a chance. He says is wonderful and praiseworthy. He says, but he says you have to remember that if you adopt a boy, for example, when that boy gets to be around 9 years old, you can't hug and kiss him anymore because this is not your natural son. And you can't be alone with him in the house. And if you adopt a girl, your husband has to know that once she gets to, say, like around Bas Mitzvah age, he can't hug and kiss her anymore. And he can't be alone with her in the house because this is not his natural daughter. So, of course, the girls in the class I was taking this class with were very, very upset. And they thought it was very unfair and not right and cruel and yada, yada. And this rabbi explained it to him this way. He says, the purpose of Torah is to get us in touch with reality, that you have to remember that this child is, the reality is that this is not your biological child, and that this child is adopted. And he said, he was giving an example about how you have, we have situations, not so much today, because today when people adopt children, they're very open about it. In fact, the children are raised, they know that they're adopted. And of course, the parents, raise them in a positive way about, hey, we picked you, we really wanted you. We picked you from all these kids, and we, because we really adored you, we really wanted you. Yeah. So when I was a child, though, it was very strange. When I was a child, adoption records were sealed. It was very hard for anybody who was adopted to find out who their biological parents were. And there were many parents of adopted children who at that time were told that they shouldn't tell their kids they're adopted. And then their kids found this out years later. So this rabbi was talking about those incidences. He says, when an Orthodox, family adopts a child, this child is raised with the reality, knowing that, that they're adopted. And part of handling life is dealing with reality. But there's also positive, there's positive ways too. Like when you make a bracha, it gets you in touch with the idea that you're taking something physical that was created by God and you're elevating it to the spiritual by making a bracha over it, like food, before you consume it. And it gives you an appreciation of the reality that's around you.
See, it's just when we talk about, and this is the thing, I guess, like Judaism, it doesn't change. It might adjust, it might have one bend or another, but it doesn't change the rules. And it kind of makes you stick with a level of reality where people might be thinking of the newest, latest philosophy, but because Judaism has like this philosophy that's been around for the past like 3,000 years, like we're not bending from it, we're not taking away from it.
And I think people in general have more respect for somebody who doesn't, who follows their philosophy and has, how can I say it?
Doesn't cherry pick and bend.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's funny you say that, and I'm not sure if I've mentioned this on a different podcast episode, but there was this famous. So there's two parts to the story. One part is I was reading through the Rebbe's letters one time, and the letter was to a guy who was asking the Rebbe, why don't we realize that we can understand science through religion? Why do we need to separate them? And the Rebbe was saying is that you separate them because you're not going to cherry pick and jerry rig the latest scientific understanding when scientific understandings change every 2 minutes, and that we don't go ahead and cherry pick and adjust to what science has to say. We stick to our own reality, we stick to our own philosophy, and then let the science go on its own little journey. And I first read it, I got very upset. I'm like, this is ridiculous. What are you talking about? Cherry picking. What's this whole cherry picking stuff? I didn't get it. And then about like a couple months or almost a year later, I was listening to this this spokesman, not spokesman, but this speaker, Christopher Hitchens. He was an atheist. He ironically died of I think mouth cancer or like whatnot, which was funny because his whole idea was he was, giving all this atheistic speeches. But one of the things he said he would respect religion if it didn't cherry pick the scientific ideologies to fit its narrative. I'm like, whoa. And that's exactly the reason why. With religiosity. We only got about 10 minutes left, but would you have any advice for young parents
enjoy your kids. Enjoy them. Get really just play with your baby. You know, when they're big, play with them. When they get older, you know, play games with them, talk to them, take them places, and just enjoy being with them.
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
I think, you know, your kids will pick up on that. That'll be, you know, I think I think parents I think parents worry too much about their kids achieving. Oh, they want them in the highest classes. They want them to get straight A's, they this, they that. You know, there if your child has the inclination to push themselves and to want to be in gifted and talented programs to get straight A's, God bless them, that's terrific. But if they don't, leave them alone, let them develop their own talents and just, you know, enjoy them and have a good relationship with them. Not that you should, not that they're, if they're doing something wrong, that you shouldn't correct them. But you should definitely, you know, that's part of parenting. I'm not, when I say correcting, I don't mean beating the living daylights out of your kid, God forbid. I'm talking about constructive criticism. I'm talking, you know what I'm talking about, you know,
Yeah,
that's
I know
easy
what you're
to
saying. I
accept.
know what you
Yeah.
mean. This is the
Right.
1940s. We're not gonna beat our kids. You know, just like
But just enjoy them. You know, when they're babies, bounce them on your knee, play with them, clap their hands, sing to them, you know, do things like that. In fact, I remember one of the problems your father had was that he couldn't clap a steady rhythm. And it was so funny. People laugh about how unmusically untalented he was. It was not he was good in the area of art. He was
Mhm.
very good in art, but music, forget it. And it's ironic because here he marries somebody who's a musician, you know, and he is totally untalented. So finally, I was trying to show him how to clap a steady beat, and he still couldn't do it. And I said to him, "Didn't your mother ever put you on her lap and bounce you up and down to go 1, 2, 1, 2 on her knees like that?" He says, "No."
Well, how did your parents play with you?
I remember my mother, um, when I was in a crib. I must have been pretty little. I was in my crib, and she would tap out rhythms on the back on the crib on the with the thing that you raise up and down, and she would tap rhythms out, and I would tap them back to her.
Oh, wow. That's
And I
really
remember when I
cool.
went to try for my scholarship at Peabody in the prep, that the woman who tested me said, "I want you to duplicate this rhythm." And no matter what she tapped out on the piano, I tapped right back for her. And she looked at my mother. She goes, "Wow, she's amazing." I go, "Amazing? Doesn't everybody do this?" I didn't think anything amazing was. I didn't think there was anything that was amazing about it.
You know, it's funny you talked about that. I was remember hanging out with my friend Ephraim, and he's a drummer, and he had this whole tempo that he was doing on the drums, and he's like, "Can you do this?" And I've never done really a lot of drums. I'm like, "Yeah, sure, I'll give it a shot," and I was able to do it.
Wow.
And he looks at me, he's like, "Fuck," because I thought I was the only one that could do this, blah blah blah. But yeah, it was good. It's funny because it's like I could have done something like more with music. I just didn't make it into a whole big thing because I went into architecture, you know. So that's his own little artistic journey.
Let's put it this way: money wise, I think you made I think you made a very good decision.
Oh yeah, I mean, I my main goal was money. Like honestly, it's why like I knew I'd be a sucker for the arts, but I had to find something that like I could at least do in the long run that will, you know, help me financially a lot easier or a lot more practical. You know, people definitely need architecture, and then of course they need music, but music is very saturated. Architecture, I don't really think is so much saturated. Um, but we're almost out of time. Got 5 more minutes. But could you explain to me the stupid things you did as a teenager?
Hitchhiking.
Yeah. But it was the
Um,
50s and 60s. It was more okay to hitchhike.
Actually 60s. I was a teenage.
60s, yeah, teenager in
I was a
60s.
teenager during the 60s. Um, that was one of the stupidest things I did. Let me think.
Something you could
Not so
say on
much as a
there.
teenager anymore, but more in college. Um, driving under the influence of marijuana.
Oh gosh.
Oh, this is a nice. What happened was one of our friends, um, when I forgot, I think we were in college. One of our friends went for a job interview, and they wanted to give him a polygraph test. So they asked him during the polygraph test, "Have you ever smoked marijuana?" And he said, "Yeah." They said, "Who did you smoke with?" And he didn't want to tell them. So they said, "If you tell us the names of the people you smoked with, we'll give you the job."
He ratted you out?
So he told them my name and another friend's name. And then he called me up and told me what happened. I said, and then they didn't give him the job. And I could tell, like, shortly after he told me this, so the other friend called me and he says to me, "What are you going to do?" I said, "Listen, I got school, I got work, I got a life. I'm going to go wherever I want to go, whenever I want to go, because I know now that I have 24-hour police surveillance." And true enough, wherever I drove, I could be down a dark, lonely country road. Late at night, there was always a car behind me. I was walking downtown around the same time. I decided to take a chance and walk downtown around 1 o'clock in the morning. Yeah, there was a cop behind me. I said,
Wow.
"This is great. I got 24-hour police protection. Oh, this is wonderful."
Oh my gosh. I mean, people were crazy. I mean, honestly, like even when I was growing up, marijuana possession was just like it slowly became a misdemeanor by the time I was 20. When I was 20, one of my friends got caught and he got like 30 days of community service and that was it. But I remember when I was younger, I had all these like just say no stuff and I was like so scared of getting into it, And I think this would be a good topic for us to discuss the next episode. But like, what were your trips like? What did you really like think about or understand or like discover? Because like when I smoked, at one point I saw everybody in cartoon. It must have been laced with something. I don't know. And I was like just walking around and I went into my friend's house and he showed me this book. He realized I was blazed. So he showed me this book and I started cracking up and laughing at the book and like just like moving it and whatnot. I was just in hysterics. But like sometimes I would like just go ahead and watch The Flash, this TV show, and I would
I
just
remember, I remember The Flash.
yeah, so I would just get really into the TV show and just like watch it for like hours. One time I even saw this one movie called The Artist, which was a black and white silent film. And only at the end of the film does the main character finally say like good night or like thank you or something like that. And like watching this whole like 2.5 hour movie and then finally like in silence where you just see everyone move and you're just hearing the music and finally one person just like speaks at the end like just like blew my mind for a little bit. But like anything like that?
There was one. Well, I only tried it 3 times.
Sure.
It burned my throat terribly. And after the 3rd time, I said, "Forget it. It's I can't stand this stuff. It's just burning my throat. It's not doing anything for me."
Okay. So less than a minute left. What anything you want to say or do?
But that's all, folks.
That's all, folks. All right. I love you, Ma. Have a wonderful Shabbos.
Have a good Shabbos, everybody.
Bye.